The truth exposed unbelievable talent of one black girl who transformed her school in 30 days. Zara Thompson stood in the back of her art class, invisible amidst the clamor of Jefferson High. The whispers, laughter, and bravado of the school's elite twisted around her, suffocating her artistry. Daily she felt the weight of dismissive glances and uncaring encounters with teachers who seemed to forget her name. "You should focus on more practical things, Zara," Mrs. Jensen had said this morning, her words sharp, puncturing Zara's fragile ambition. More practical things. Zara's heart raced at the indignity of it. Wasn't art just as practical as math or science? As days bled into weeks, Zara grappled with the overwhelming urge to speak, to scream, but nothing came out. How could she challenge the currents of a school that preferred to ignore her potential? Each moment spent supporting her mother after countless shifts at the diner made her more aware of the economic divide that shaped their lives. Her mom worked tirelessly, coming home exhausted with a smile that hid her struggles. Zara admired her strength, but felt the guilt pangs of her own silence, her art gathering dust in the corners of her mind. A few days later, a comment from another teacher cut deeper. "You need to find a more suitable outlet for your energy, Zara." Anger fused with frustration. It made her body tremble, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts she couldn't articulate. Back in her room, she stared at the blank canvas. The emptiness mirrored her feelings, as hollow as the school halls engulfed by the privilege of her peers. With each stroke of paint, she poured her rage onto the canvas, transforming her dismay into bold colors and fierce shapes. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Zara's artwork evolved. It morphed into mirror reflections of her own battles and the systemic injustices she faced. But the school's administration turned a blind eye to her talent, wrapped up in their elitist values. Frustrations peaked with the arrival of Principal Harper, whose dismissive attitudes towards anything outside the traditional curriculum solidified Zara's sense of doom. Every step towards her dreams felt thwarted, and as she readied herself for what she thought was her moment, the tension lingered like a thick fog. Then, everything shifted when Mr. Patterson, the custodian, noted her isolation one afternoon.
"You're braver than you think, Zara," he said with a knowing smile, eyes crinkling at the corners. Zara found herself opening up to him, her hopes, her fears, the suffocating pressure of potential that felt more like shackles than wings. Their late-night painting sessions became a lifeline, where the walls of her confusion blurred with colors, yet every stroke held the weight of her hidden legacy. Could she break free? As the exhibition loomed closer, Zara felt the audacity of hope, but was haunted by the fear that no one would see her, the unseen girl still buried beneath everyone else's noise. Just as her most poignant piece took shape, Zara realized that acknowledging her worth could threaten to shatter that fragile thread of connection. As the day of the exhibition approached, the tension mounted, her heart clenched tightly around a wellspring of hope and doubt. Would this moment validate her struggle, or would she fade into the shadows once more? Standing beside her work, Zara felt the walls closing in, her breaths shallow as the crowd began to gather. Would they finally see her? Would her voice rise above the whispers? The gallery doors creaked open, and the anticipation morphed into an agonizing waiting game, leaving Zara suspended between hope and despair, as she hoped for something bigger amidst the uncertainty. The gallery buzzed with conversations and laughter, an overwhelming tide of noise drowning out the quiet tumult raging within Zara. She stood stiffly beside her art piece, a large canvas splashed with vibrant colors and striking contrasts that echoed her own internal tumult. Each brushstroke was a whisper, a plea for recognition from a world that continually erased her existence. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass frame, a girl on the precipice of something transformative, both exhilarating and terrifying. As the crowd meandered from one piece to another, Zara felt invisible again. The admiration, or lack thereof, of her classmates drifted past her like a feather on the wind. Their minds were consumed with other things, social dynamics, college applications, and all the practical considerations she had been told to focus on. Zara's pulse quickened. Would her voice be eclipsed once again? The initial onlookers brushed past her without acknowledgement, and she wrestled with the urge to call out, to demand their attention. But the words lodged in her throat, heavy like stones. A painful silence settled over her as she forced herself to breathe through the disappointment. Her fingers fidgeted with the edges of her torn denim jacket, a poor armor against her vulnerability. But Zara reminded herself of the late nights spent with the custodian, Mr. Patterson. He had instilled a flicker of belief in her vibrancy,
a hope that gently pulsed just under her skin. Then she spotted someone, a figure who seemed to loom larger than life within the crowd.
Principal Harper was standing before her canvas, head tilted as if considering each stroke's intention. Zara felt her heart race. Was the principal truly studying her work, or merely passing through like the rest? The moment stretched, an eternity packed into a heartbeat, and Zara's breath hitched as Harper's eyes flicked toward her, a show of resolve. Principal Harper finally approached, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism painted across her features. "Interesting piece," she pronounced, her tone flat. Thank you," Zara managed, her voice a quiet tremor. What's the theme here?" Harper prodded, attempting to find depth where she had initially anticipated none. "This piece is about struggle. It's about layers, how each of us has hidden parts that we sometimes ignore." Zara leaned into the discomfort, aiming to articulate her vision, her story. Each word felt labored yet liberating. "Layers, huh?" Harper's eyebrows raised, though her expression didn't shift. Zara read the skepticism behind the principal's eyes. "Well, it's different, I'll give you that." Zara's heart sank for a beat. Different. In the world of art, it was a double-edged sword. As the principal walked away, that singular word reverberated in Zara's mind, begging the question, was she simply a novelty? The crowd around her grew denser, laughter rising higher than the din of doubt swirling in her mind. All that effort, all those sleepless nights, did that matter? With each comment she overheard, a pain twisted deeper inside her. What if none of them understood her? In that moment of piercing clarity, Zara recognized that her journey was not merely about the art she created. It was about finding her own voice amidst the cacophony of doubt, about positioning herself not just in the eyes of others, but in her own reflection. Summoning every ounce of courage, she stepped away from her canvas, resolute. If she was truly to transform not just her art but her existence, it required more than just being seen. It required her to confront those whispers, to confront Principal Harper and the institution that nearly silenced her. Zara steeled herself. The time had come to face the dismissive attitudes that loomed larger than her own artwork. She squared her shoulders, her breath evening out as she followed the principal, determined to challenge the very system that sought to erase her. But was she ready for the confrontation? Would standing up to authority shape her future, or push her further into the shadows? In that decisive moment, Zara found herself at the edge of revelation, ready to venture into the battle for her truth. Zara's heart thundered in her chest as she navigated through the throng of social chatter, each step feeling heavier than the last.
She had spent so long hidden behind her art, afraid to voice her truths. Now, with determination fueling her resolve, she approached Principal Harper, a confrontation that felt both terrifying and liberating. The principal stood discussing another student's project, her arms crossed defensively. Zara's throat felt tight as she rehearsed the words she had long prepared in her mind. After a moment, as the conversation waned, Zara took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Principal Harper?" Her voice wavered, but she pressed on, urgency hanging in the air around them. "Can we talk for a moment?" Harper turned, surprise flickering across her features as she registered Zara's presence. "Of course, Zara. What's on your mind?" Understanding this was an opportunity, she swallowed her fears. "That comment you made about my piece being different, it felt dismissive. Can you tell me exactly what you meant?" The principal's brow furrowed slightly, a flash of annoyance skimming her eyes. "I meant that it stands out, which can be both a positive and a negative thing." Zara felt a surge of indignation. "But it is a positive thing. Art is about expressing oneself, pushing boundaries." Harper's posture shifted. She was no longer just the authority figure, but now a listener confronted by genuine fervor. "I appreciate your passion, but uniqueness can lead to misunderstanding in a setting like this. Not everyone will grasp your intention." "Then let me explain it," Zara argued, feeling the world around her fade into silence. "This piece embodies the struggle to be seen, the layers of identity that exist within us. It's not just about perceived uniqueness, but about finding strength in our personal narratives." Principal Harper studied her, the skepticism beginning to melt, replaced spark of interest. "So you're saying your work is a reflection of the challenges you faced?" "Exactly. And I think art should be provocative and provoke conversations, especially about identity and expectations. If I'm not able to share that, what's the point of creating?" Zara felt a rush of energy as she articulated her ideas, possibly for the first time out loud. The principal tilted her head, deliberation etched across her face. "It's courageous to put yourself out there. I respect that."
Zara's heart soared as she sensed a shift, a possibility of recognition. I just don't want to feel like I'm being categorized as just a different artist. I want to be more than a novelty. With a measuring gaze, Harper finally nodded, perhaps seeing something beyond Zara's facade. Your perspective is valid, but remember that the world might be slow to change, and transforming perceptions takes time. Then I'll dedicate my time to that, Zara declared with newfound conviction. Very well. Perhaps I can provide you a platform to present your work more fully, an opportunity to share your vision with students beyond just the gallery context.
Harper's lips curled into a faint smile, a hint of admiration breaking through her usual demeanor. Zara's chest tightened with conflicting emotions, exhilaration, uncertainty, and an unquenchable thirst for more. I would appreciate that, thank you. Having stood her ground, Zara felt a wave of empowerment wash over her. This wasn't just about the artwork, but about claiming her place. She understood that each brushstroke was a piece of her fight, the story waiting to be heard. And as she turned to leave, the urgency within her stirred again. The fight she had begun against dismissiveness was only the first. How would she continue to transform not just her art, but the very environment that sought to define her? The realm of possibility stretched out before her as she stepped away. What lay ahead? Would others be inspired by her courage? Zara knew the battle was far from over. There were more confrontations to be faced, more truths to uncover, and perhaps even more allies to discover who would echo her voice. Zara stepped into the art room the next day, buoyed by her discussion with Principal Harper. The warm sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the paint-splattered tables and shelves lined with a riot of colors. Inspiration surged through her veins, but with it came a nagging thought. Could she truly transform perceptions in just 1 month? Determination anchored her to the floor as she set to work. Her next piece needed to be powerful, a testament to her journey thus far. Yet she wrestled with the idea of what to create. Was she ready to bring forth the real essence of her struggle, to expose the vulnerabilities that made her art meaningful? She took a deep breath and allowed herself to explore. In the corner of the room, a blank canvas stood ready, but instead of becoming intimidated by its emptiness, she saw it as an opportunity, a chance to redefine not only how she viewed her own art, but how others perceived her. With each brushstroke, she aimed for authenticity, layering paint with raw emotion. As the colors blended together, she uncovered fragments of her identity that had long been concealed. Yet a thought gnawed at her. Would her classmates embrace this version of her, one stripped bare of pretense? What if they didn't understand? The fear of judgment loomed large, much like it had in the past. Despite that, she pushed herself to confront the discomfort. Each stroke felt like a rebellion against the limitations she had accepted. She needed to confront her fears, not just for herself, but for others who felt suffocated under expectation. Days rolled by, and with each passing moment, the artwork began to embody her truest self. Vibrant colors clashed and merged with somber tones, telling a story of resilience, complexity, and the fight for visibility. Alongside her artistic process, Zara also strategized a presentation she could make to her peers. She envisioned standing before them, opening the door for a dialogue, not merely about art, but about identity and belonging. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Rumors swirled around the school. Whispers of Zara's audacity filled the hallways. Some classmates questioned why she, a different artist, felt she had the right to challenge established norms. In a way, their judgments echoed Principal Harper's initial comment, but felt more personal, laden with the weight of social insecurities. Zara sensed a growing animosity, particularly from a group of students who had once been her close peers. Their laughs echoed in the hall like daggers aimed at her effort. Still, this only fed the fire of her determination. What if, instead of hiding from those doubts, she confronted them head-on? Perhaps their reactions could serve as a catalyst for deeper conversations that couldn't exist if everyone stayed silent. One afternoon, feeling emboldened, she approached the group. "Can we talk?" The words came out sharper than she anticipated, fueled by a mixture of pride and anxiety. The silence that followed felt thick, a palpable tension hanging between them. Zara swallowed hard, searching for the right words. "I want to share my artwork with you. It's more than just paint on a canvas. It's about who I am. Will you listen?"
A flicker of surprise crossed their faces. Would they engage, or would this be another moment of dismissal? Zara steadied her breath. As she stood there, she felt the weight of her intention illuminating her stance. Would this be the moment she either soared or stumbled? The silence around her thickened with anticipation, a silence that could either crack like glass or shatter the walls keeping her voice confined. Zara knew she had crossed a line. This was no longer just about reclaiming her narrative. It was about demanding space for all stories, especially those often left unheard. But she felt unmoored, the world pressing in on her. What would they choose? Would they embrace her truth, or would they cast her aside once more? Time hung suspended. Zara's heart raced as she awaited the inevitable response. The hushed atmosphere enveloped Zara, her breath catching in her throat as she locked eyes with her former friends. The weight of their collective gaze felt like a challenge, one that could either affirm her existence or render her invisible once more. Her mind raced, teetering on the cusp of uncertainty, yet she clung to the notion that vulnerability had a unique power. "Listen," she began, her voice steadying despite her internal turmoil. "I've always felt like an outsider, like my art was a puzzle that didn't fit into your world. But I realize now that my struggle, my story, it's what makes me who I am." Each word ignited a flicker of spark within her, a recognition that her journey wasn't solitary. It was a reflection of shared experiences that many, including her peers, grappled with in their own ways.
The silence persisted, an echo reverberating in her ears. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in again. What if they saw her as pretentious, or worse yet, irrelevant? But the thought of retreating felt like abandoning everything she had fought for. She pressed on. "I want to invite you into my world. My latest piece isn't just about color. It's about embracing who we are, all of us. Can we have a conversation about that?" A murmur spread among the group, but it wasn't the affirmative response she'd hoped for. One of her former friends, Michelle, stepped forward, arms crossed defensively. "You think we care? You think you're the only one who struggled? That you can just reveal your struggle and expect us to applaud you?" The venom in Michelle's voice pinned Zara in place, each word a sharp reminder of the vulnerabilities she was exposing. "That's not what I meant," Zara responded, incredulity mixing with a burgeoning courage within her. "I'm shedding layers, hoping it helps others do the same. It's okay to struggle. I thought you'd understand that." Each retort felt like a brave declaration, an exploration of her own resolve in the face of opposition. But as she spoke, she could feel the air growing thicker. Her classmates exchanged glances, gauging reactions, trying to decipher how they felt about Zara's unapologetic authenticity. Would they support her, or have their judgmental whispers solidify into a barrier she could not pierce? "Why are you putting all this pressure on us?" another voice chimed in, laced with impatience. "You do realize we actually have our own lives, right?" Zara's heart dropped. It felt as though the chance to connect, to build bridges instead of walls, was slipping right from her hands. Yet somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark remained lit. It urged her to take a stand, to foster connection despite the resistance. "I'm not expecting anything from you, just an opportunity for us to be real." In that moment, Zara realized the essence of her challenge. It wasn't merely about showcasing her art. It was about the capacity to create dialogue, to delve deeply into shared vulnerabilities irrespective of superficial hierarchies. She had to demonstrate that art wasn't simply a reflection of individual experience, but a mirror that could connect even those who felt worlds apart. As she stepped back, breathing deeply, the possibilities felt infinite. She wasn't just showcasing a painting. She was inviting them into a narrative larger than the canvas, a narrative steeped in shared histories, struggles, and dreams. But just as she felt a glimmer of hope, Michelle's voice sliced through. "You might think this will change things, but not everyone is ready for your truth. Just don't expect us to change because you did." The weight of that statement hung between them like a storm cloud, dark and ominous.
Zara recognized that overcoming this obstacle might be her most significant battle yet, one that would prove whether her vision could truly shift perspectives. Her resolve solidified. This encounter wouldn't define her. It was just the beginning. But what lay ahead remained uncertain. Fear and anticipation intertwined as she considered her next steps. Would she retreat, or would she challenge her peers further? The tension hung palpably in the air, and with it lingered a question. Was bravery enough to change minds and hearts, or did she need to confront something much deeper? Facing not just her peers, but the very barriers they represented, Zara prepared for a confrontation that could either lead her closer to her goal or expose her to even harsher criticism. Zara stood at the precipice of her own vulnerability, feeling as if the ground beneath her was both unstable and exhilarating. The echoes of her peers' dismissive remarks swirled in her head, yet it became increasingly clear that she had a choice to make. In this moment, it was not just about art or acceptance. It was about self-actualization and defiance in the face of skepticism. "Do you realize what you're asking of us?" Michelle pressed further, breaking the charged silence. "To just forget the past? To applaud you like you're some kind of hero?" Zara sensed the frustration emanating from the group, a reflection of their own battles that lay unacknowledged. With a deep breath, Zara decided that self-defense would not serve her well. She needed to confront not just Michelle, but the deeply rooted perceptions that lay among her peers. "I'm not asking for applause," she said, her voice calmer but firm. "I'm inviting you to join me in authenticity. Each of us has battled our own demons. What makes my story different from yours?" Her words landed, heavy and truthful, awakening something in the room. She could see it in their expressions, shifts of discomfort mixed with curiosity. Zara seized the moment, sensing an opening. "I used to think my art was just for me," she continued, "but maybe it's a compass for others, guiding us to embrace our complexities, not hide them. Maybe it's a catalyst for change." At that, Zara noticed nods among a few classmates, tiny shifts that signified a willingness to engage. The tension transformed, albeit slightly, into an opportunity for connection and reflection. Something about her directness disarmed them, bringing a flicker of hope to a previously bleak atmosphere. Encouraged, Zara took a step forward, channeling both authority and vulnerability. "We are all artists in our ways. We create narratives based not on acceptance but on honesty. I know what it feels like to be marginalized. I felt the sting of dismissal. But I've also begun to embrace those experiences and weave them into my art." Her heart raced, not from fear but from empowerment. With each word, she felt liberated.
The very act of confrontation, once intimidating, became a platform for her to rise above mere approval-seeking behavior. She knew the stakes were high, yet refusal to participate in her own narrative felt like conceding to their doubt. "We're more alike than different. Imagine what we could create together if we embraced our stories instead of dismissing one another," Zara declared, striving to dismantle the walls that had been built over the years, walls her peers seemed loath to see, let alone challenge. As she concluded, silence reigned once more, but this time it felt charged with potential rather than resistance. Still, the lingering shadows of skepticism clouded over Michelle's brow. "Art is subjective, Zara. Not everyone will see it your way. Are you ready for that?" A flicker of hesitation crossed Zara's mind. Was she truly prepared for the varied interpretations of her art? The dichotomy of acceptance and rejection loomed ominously before her, and yet she felt emboldened. "I don't need everyone to agree with me. I only need to be true to myself." The conversation turned instead to the layers of emotional rawness in her work, their defenses softening. Zara had opened a door, and while it wasn't swung wide open, there was potential for the key to turn. The situation was far from resolved, but Zara recognized the journey would not end this day. It was merely the starting line for deeper conversations and confrontations yet to unfold. With a renewed sense of determination, Zara felt the weight of her art transform into armor, readying her for the emotional and professional challenges that lay ahead. What remained unclear was whether her peers would choose to follow her lead, or whether each would retreat back to their comfort zones, shadowed by their unresolved issues. Amidst the uncertainty, a thought began to take shape. If the walls built over years could crumble, what new heights could she and her peers reach together? As their eyes met, tangled with unspoken words, it became clear that the next confrontation would hinge not just on artistic integrity, but also on raw, unfiltered truth. Would she find the courage to hold the space for others, or would she need to turn her focus inward to unearth the depths of her own self-worth? The answer awaited her in the next moment, a moment that promised to devour the silence and ignite tumultuous change. Zara's pulse thrummed in her ears as the weight of her declaration hung in the air. She needed to seize this fragile moment. Beneath the cautious expressions of her peers lay a powerful opportunity for connection, one that could break the shackles of their discomfort and evolve into something extraordinary. But her conviction didn't reduce the gnawing fear about the potential rejection that lurked on the fringes. Uncertainty was a storm she could feel brewing just beyond the momentary clarity.
As the heady silence enveloped them, Zara took a calculated breath, readying herself for the next phase of her uncharted journey. It began to crystallize in her mind, a plan, albeit vague, that would allow her to push the boundaries she had once believed were insurmountable. What if she could initiate a series of workshops where they all could pour their hidden stories into their art? A collective space, liberated from judgment, where everyone could unearth their vulnerabilities and craft their narratives. Would they accept her uncertainty and rise to the challenge of their own truths? How about we create a project, a series of pieces that reflect our individual journeys? Zara's voice was steady, intentional. We all have stories that deserve to be heard. What if we collaborated? Each of us could contribute a piece, and together we could showcase our raw truths, however messy they may be. A flicker of apprehension crossed her classmates' faces, but also something else, intrigue. Conversations began to weave through the group as they mulled over the idea of sharing their art. Michelle, still skeptical but decidedly more open, leaned forward. We could do that, but what if we end up exposing things we're not ready to face? Not everyone may be comfortable. Her voice was laced with genuine concern, and Zara recognized it as a reflection of her own fears. Maybe that's exactly the point, Zara replied, her heart pounding. We can't hide from what we are. Each brushstroke, each word can serve as a catharsis, a way to confront our fears together. We don't have to do this alone. Encouraged by her own momentum, Zara thought back to her most vulnerable moments, turning points when she had stepped outside her comfort zone to share her art. Unraveling those feelings had always led to growth, a rebirth of sorts. With each participant's contribution, they could create an intricate tapestry of shared experiences, illuminating the spectrum of identities and emotions often buried in silence. Could this transformation not only redefine their connection to art, but strengthen their bonds as individuals? A young man from across the room raised his hand tentatively. I'm in. I've always felt like nobody truly got my work. Maybe this is a chance to be seen. His admission resonated in the air, catalyzing others to speak up. The realization of shifting dynamics excited Zara. The concept of crafting art together was evolving into a sanctuary of mutual encouragement. Despite the unknown ramifications of this venture, breakthrough was igniting in her chest. They were beginning to envision a space that fostered their creative expressions rather than stifled them. Yet a nagging thought that had haunted her returned, the fear of failing to facilitate this newfound openness. What if her leadership ultimately fell short? Amidst her ambitious aspirations, Zara knew she had to develop her own artistic skills further in order to guide her peers effectively. She would need to delve deeper into her understanding of collaboration, communication, and artistic execution. This moment had illuminated a path forward, but it also demanded her personal growth to lead the charge. As the energy in the room shifted toward agreement, a flurry of ideas ensued, yet one question lingered, beckoning her into deeper introspection. What would she learn about herself in the process of navigating this unpredictable collaboration? The realization tightened her chest. It was about more than just art or acceptance. It would carve a path toward her own self-discovery, too. Zara felt exhilarated, but aware of the looming complexity of collective creation. What would it take to merge their stories into something powerful enough to shatter their individual fears? As the group continued to brainstorm, Zara's heart raced, realizing that she stood on the brink of something monumental. But first, she would need to face not only her peers' expectations, but her own depths of creativity. The dialogue flowed around her like a river gaining momentum, and deeper questions began bubbling to the surface. How could she cultivate a space where vulnerability became strength, and every truth a brushstroke on the canvas of their intertwined lives? With the stakes rising, Zara readied herself for the next confrontation. The real work had only just begun, and the true test of her artistic leadership loomed ahead, promising challenges that would stretch her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Would she be able to hold space for every fragile truth, or would the venture reveal cracks in her ability to lead? Only time would tell. Zara felt the weight of her own words pulling at her, and with every eager suggestion from her classmates, she grappled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As concepts collided in the air, the prospect of creation loomed like a storm cloud, charged and ready to unleash. How could she navigate this unpredictable current as an untested leader? Determined to make this endeavor a success, Zara found herself drawn back to past moments of artistic exploration. Those exhilarating times spent in her tiny makeshift studio, late nights when paint covered her palms, and her heart raced as each stroke transformed blank canvases into manifestations of life's chaos.
Now, faced with guiding a chorus of creative souls, she questioned if she could channel that energy into something meaningful for a group, rather than just herself. Among the swirling energy, the lingering question, almost an echo, reverberated through her mind. Would they trust her to guide them? Diving headfirst into their collective vulnerabilities required courage, not just from her peers, but from Zara herself. She felt a fierce determination rise within her, a willingness to shatter the self-imposed limitations that had previously held her back. It was time to confront her fears head-on. What if we start with individual statements about our experiences?
Zara proposed, her voice breaking through the chatter. She noticed each face turn toward her, a blend of curiosity and hesitation etched across their expressions. We could each share a line or two about what our art means to us, even if it feels raw. That can be the foundation for our pieces. We'll lay bare our truths before we even paint. Tentative nods and murmurs of agreement spiraled through the group. Zara felt a surge of possibility. This was not just about creating a project, it was a chance to dismantle walls of isolation. But the prospect of peeling back layers of her own vulnerability held a sharp edge. What would she reveal about herself? What if her own truth felt too fragile to share amidst the collective? As the room buzzed with ideas, Zara shifted inward, grappling with remnants of insecurity that threatened to unmoor her resolve. Artistic expression had always served as her sanctuary, a means to explore the depths of her identity. How could she encapsulate that in a format that invited others in? She needed a strategy. Deep down, she recognized that this was not only an artistic endeavor, but an exercise in leadership. Her mind began to spin possible outcomes, creating blueprints for their workshops. She envisioned a framework where they would build on each other's contributions, discussions that would cultivate trust. Together, they could explore forms of expression beyond the expected. The challenge would be balancing guidance with openness. She couldn't dictate the flow too tightly, or let chaos reign. Yet the realization also dawned upon her that every moment of apparent chaos could hold hidden beauty. The uncertainties, the rawness, could transform into unabashed strength. But would she have the fortitude to embrace that? As palpable fear wrapped tightly around her, she made a mental note to confront these anxieties before they took root. Over the next few days, Zara committed herself to honing her artistic skills and understanding group dynamics better. She began researching methods to facilitate conversations and to distill collective experiences into powerful art. Journaling became her ally, a haven for testing her ideas and unraveling her thoughts. Each page filled with sketches, quotes, and notes whisked away a bit of her insecurity and replaced them with confidence. As the timeline for their first workshop approached, Zara felt a nervous energy crackling in her veins. More than the fear of failure, there was a tantalizing thrill and anticipation of growth, not just for her peers, but for her own self-discovery. She found herself studying each member's unique qualities, the hesitations they carried, and the flickers of passion that ignited when they engaged with their art. But hidden doubts still lurked. Would her vision coalesce into something transformative? Or was she merely fooling herself into believing they could all rise together?
The risk of losing this fragile dynamic gnawed at her edges, yet a promise of potential shimmered just out of reach. As she gathered her materials for the workshop, a thought struck her. Discovery isn't solely about triumphs. Understanding one's own vulnerabilities can yield the strongest art of all. In this shared journey, she would ultimately face her greatest test, the creation of a safe haven for vulnerability and the artistic interplay of their intertwined truths. Zara looked at the blank canvas ahead of her, ready for whatever awaited. With each brushstroke and confession, they inched closer to something remarkable. But as the day drew near, the question remained, would authenticity emerge triumphant, or would it become a haunting specter they all feared to confront? As the morning of the workshop dawned, a veil of early sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the room where Zara had prepared for what felt like an impending revolution. She stood before a blank canvas, the surface waiting for the first stroke, a daunting metaphor for her own journey into leadership. This was more than just art. It was a crucible for change. Zara inhaled deeply, using the quiet of the moment to steady the trembling in her hands. This was a rehearsal for vulnerability. The collective emotions of her classmates hung in the air as palpably as the paintbrush poised at her fingertips. And yet, as that familiar blend of fear and excitement surged within her, doubts crept back in, demanding her attention. She questioned her ability again. Would her vision resonate? Could she funnel the emotions of a diverse group into a coherent symphony of creativity? The moment each classmate walked through the door, Zara felt the shifting energy. She observed their shy smiles, the tentative glances as they found their places among the scattered art supplies. They each carried their stories, and the weight of their experiences was palpable. Zara had initiated this gathering,
Now she was tasked with guiding it. But how could she lead without revealing the very wounds she felt ashamed of? "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice slightly wavering but resilient. "Today is about sharing, discovering, and creating our truths. Let's go around the circle, and I'll start." Half-formed thoughts raced through her mind, an urgent reminder that she hadn't fully prepared herself to share what lay beneath her surface. "I've struggled with the idea of being seen versus being unknown, much like the way art can hide or reveal our innermost selves," Zara confessed, her heart pounding. The subtle shift of eyebrows raised, and she caught glimpses of reflection in her peers' eyes. Maybe they could relate. Maybe her admission could be a spark. With each person who followed, their sentences held the weight of both pain and beauty. She listened attentively, admiring the courage emerging as they unveiled their artistic journeys.
There was Sam, whose love for photography deftly intertwined with feelings of inadequacy. Jenna spoke of music as a refuge during tumultuous family dynamics. Each voice was uniquely vibrant, yet echoed a universal thread of longing for connection. As their statements wove together, Zara felt the building tide of energy around her. Anxiety was transformed into excitement, a tidal wave fueled by shared truths. They were acknowledging vulnerabilities, and with each shared sentiment, the connection solidified. She began to see her role not just as a leader, but as a facilitator of their collective catharsis. Tuning her focus, Zara felt a shift within. She had the power to cultivate an authentic environment. In this moment, something crucial ignited in her, a connection to the fear that had long tethered her, the fear of judgment. She realized the transformative power of exposing these frailties. Art wasn't simply about skill, but also about the courage to be real. This was her awakening, one that spoke not only to herself, but also to each member sitting with her, wide-eyed and tentative. As their discussions neared an end, Zara instinctively turned toward the canvas at the front of the room. What would emerge from this collective outpouring? With newfound determination, she suggested, "Let's create a piece that reflects these truths together, one that captures our experiences, our fears, and our hopes." The energy shifted again, palpable and electric. Excitement bubbled in Zara's chest as she perceived the change in atmosphere, a tangible currency of empowerment and collaboration. Yet with this exhilaration came an awareness that they had only just begun. Each brushstroke would require them not just to reflect, but to unearth their deepest selves constantly. Could they navigate this fluid landscape of feelings together without losing their individual identities in the mix? As paint began to touch canvas in collective hues, Zara felt daring. But still, a whisper of insecurity nagged at her. What if she let them down in this collaborative venture? What if the fears they'd shared manifested again? Confronting the unknown weighed heavily, yet Zara remained resolute. This was a point of no return. She would not shy away from the discovery, nor allow her doubts to eclipse their burgeoning trust. Just then, an unexpected voice cleared the air. "Zara, what if we go in a direction that challenges us all? What if we bartered each other's vulnerabilities to create something raw, something confrontational?" The suggestion hung in the air, invigorating and fraught with potential. The specter of fear resurfaced, but so too did an almost irresistible urge to dive deeper. Zara's mind raced as she considered the implications. This would be a daring venture, but would it deepen the bond they had begun to cultivate, or would it fracture the fragile safety she'd worked hard to establish? The danger was real, but so was the exhilarating lure of triumph.
Could embracing this risk push them to uncharted territories of authentic expression? As she prepared to respond, Zara felt the pivotal weight of the moment pressing down. The journey of self-discovery and genuine connection was unfolding, and she stood at its precipice, teetering between the known and the unknown. Would she rise to meet the challenge? She took a breath, the air thick with possibility. "Let's do it," she declared, the resolve crystallizing in her heart. The transformation was just beginning, but the real question loomed larger than ever. What other truths were yet to be uncovered? In the weeks that followed, Zara unveiled a new chapter in her journey, catalyzing transformation not just within herself but amongst her peers. Each workshop became more than a platform for artistic expression. It evolved into a sanctuary of honesty, where vulnerabilities were bared, and the untold stories of her classmates began to surface like vibrant colors on a blank canvas. They tackled comfort zones. Their boundaries became fluid and dynamic. Inspired by her earlier resolve, Zara facilitated deep discussions that allowed each student to explore their narratives unapologetically. Conversations unfolded, revealing layers of shared experiences intertwined with struggles, identity, acceptance, and resilience. Zara's role shifted from merely guiding the process to becoming a co-creator alongside her peers. She discovered that her capacity to inspire was rooted in mutual vulnerability, an intricate tapestry of stories waiting to be told. Art emerged from chaos. Every session saw them blend disparate pieces of themselves into a collective creation, a powerful testament to their intertwined journeys. Paint splattered under searching hands, and brushes danced across canvases, forging connections forged from sincerity, struggle, and empowerment. The pivotal moment arrived during a culminating exhibition to showcase their collective work, a vibrant mural depicting the array of emotions and experiences from their discussions over the preceding weeks. Zara's heart raced as the unveiling approached, a palpable blend of anticipation and anxiety tangling within her. They had transformed fear into courage, and each stroke bore testament to their unique resilience. On the night of the exhibition, they gathered side by side, an unexpected alliance of artists turned friends. As the crowd began to flow in, the energy in the room shifted. Peers who once offered dismissive glances now filled the space with admiration, awed by the depth of the mural before them. Zara could hardly breathe as she observed Principal Harper, a skeptical figure from her past, scrutinizing their work closely. The principal's expression transformed as genuine curiosity overtook her initial skepticism, sparking conversations with students who had once regarded Zara with indifference.
They began discussing not just the artwork, but the courage it took to confront their innermost fears, an emotional resonance Zara had longed for all along. As recognition blossomed around them, Zara stepped forward, fervid with emotion. This piece embodies our struggles and our truths. This isn't just art, it's a reflection of who we are together. Her voice rang out, steady and sharp, quelling internal tremors that had haunted her for far too long. Zara's journey had come full circle. No longer obscured, she stood tall, a symbol of perseverance and authenticity, her once fragile ambition now transformed into radiant confidence. The applause that filled the room reverberated through her, drowning out remnants of doubt. Those dismissive glances had morphed into nods of understanding, a quiet validation of her existence and artistry. In that instant, Zara understood that true transformation was realized not through mere recognition, but through the bonds forged amidst adversity. Those walls had crumbled, replaced by the rich connections she had built alongside her peers. The voices she feared would drown her out had instead amplified her own. As the evening unfolded, the impact of Zara's transformation became evident. She had accomplished not just artistic acknowledgement, but had instilled a sense of community, an understanding that their cries for visibility extended far beyond a gallery space. They had all faced the brink of vulnerability and emerged stronger, and the connections they forged would echo long past that night. Zara stood with her classmates, looking at the mural, a testament not only to their collective creativity, but to their individual journeys of self-acceptance and empowerment. The mural was their story, told in colors and shapes, and it radiated a spirit of resilience that could not be silenced again. Conclusively, Zara had demonstrated her ability to rise, to conquer the insecurities that once threatened to envelop her like shadows. She emerged not simply as an artist, but as a confident leader igniting courage in others, her path illuminated by the very vulnerability she had once feared. In this triumph, Zara realized her greatest achievement, the capacity to unlock voices that had long been silenced, including her own. With unwavering pride, she watched as her classmates explored their renewed identities, knowing they would continue to create, not in isolation, but in celebration of their truths. This was the moment she had awaited, the moment of undeniable recognition, where she finally understood that the art of voice could paint the contours of change. Zara smiled, knowing she had not just transformed her school, but had rewritten her narrative, her identity emboldened by acceptance, courage, and the profound interconnectedness of their stories. Now, as this chapter closes, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories.
Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference.
Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Show your support for stories of personal overcoming.